Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedom, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back. Thank you for joining me for another hour of Speak Up. This is the opportunity for citizens to get in touch with the public and to tell their story. Today's episode is about Mr. Nick Haas and Representative John Burt, who've come before the Redress of Grievance committees to tell their plight with the court systems, the New Hampshire court systems. Mr. Haas has not committed any major crimes or any crime, and yet for over a 2-year period, he has been separated from his children. Today's episode is just about that dilemma, about an impossible situation that many parents find themselves when they're in front of the New Hampshire courts. The system needs to be fixed, and that's what this story is about. And thank you for joining us here on Speak Up New Hampshire. I'm Representative Kevin Avard, and joining me on today's program is Representative John Burt.
Yes.
John, what town are you from?
Goffstown.
Goffstown.
Yeah, and I represent Goffstown and Ware.
And you have your own television show as well.
I do, yeah. Yeah, right, the Goffstown Community Access.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have a lot of fun doing it. It's more of a political, it's almost all politics. And, I love doing it.
Well, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yep.
And our special guest as well is Mr. Nick Haas. Thank you for joining us, Nick, and thank you for joining Speak Up, and we want to hear your story.
Thank you.
But before we get into the meat of the whole story here, what we have, I'd like to ask Representative John Burt.
Yes.
You were asked to take on Nick's case. Could you tell us a little bit about the history, why you took on his case, and what's the process of you taking on a case like this? You're a state representative.
Yep.
Nick Haas came to you and said help.
He did. I am a new rep. This is my first term. There's a lot to it, and at first, I reached out to a lot of people to get help, and I was very happy that a lot of people were willing to help me, and they said, you got to do, file this paper and prepare this speech. You have to go in front of Redress, Rules Committee, because it was late filing. So I did all of that, and here we are. We have petition 33, and the biggest reason I took it on is I think a lot of it was Mr. Haas's attitude, and I've always admired that. If I was him, I'd be angry, and I'm sure inside he's not happy,
right.
But he just says, Nick says that, what, we got laws, just follow them.
Right.
That's all. And I've always been very impressed with that right from the day one. And anytime I've gone to his house and said, look, I need to see this paper and that paper, everything's always been wide open anytime I needed anything. So they've made it very easy for me to take this on.
So the Redress of Grievance Committee, that's a new committee that Speaker O'Brien had authored for this year.
Yes.
It actually hasn't been around for 100 years.
It should have been.
Right. And the whole idea behind the Redress of Grievance is to allow citizens of New Hampshire,
Yep.
when they're feeling as though they've exhausted all their resources with the state, to come before the legislature and say, look, help me out.
Yes. Yes.
And it's their opportunity to be heard.
Yes.
Because of what's going on. And part of the vetting process, before you can actually even come on the committee, is to find a state representative that will say, yes, I'll hear your case.
Yes.
And if the state representative says, you know what, I've listened to your case, now I believe there's some credence to it, I will represent you. And basically, that's what you're telling us, is that that's what you've done.
That's what's happened.
Okay.
And now we've gone through all the processes, and we're in front of the committee at the time this is being taped, having our testimony being heard. And I'm sitting next to Mr. Haas, given just a little bit of, help that I can throw out there every time when he talks.
And you've actually gone to court with Mr. Haas.
I have,
right?
Yeah, because I felt that was important. I really wanted to sit down with Nick and really watch his family. And then I wanted to go to court and really watch that proceedings. And I was very disappointed when I got to the court side.
So, Nick, let's get you in here on this conversation, because actually we're talking about you.
I can hear it.
So how was he in his past life? So, okay, let's see if we can get a little chronology of what's going on here. This is a divorce case. You've been divorced. Now let's talk about the children. Have you seen your children recently?
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen my children in, it's been over 2 years and 6 months.
Okay. One of the first things that, I'll act like one of the people that sits on the redress of grievance, because I do.
Yes.
Right. One of the things that always is a red flag when I hear an individual say, I haven't seen my children in 2 years. Automatically, what did you do?
Right.
Right? What crime did you commit?
I think the crime I committed was trusting that a GAL was certainly going to do what she was empowered to do.
Describe to me what a GAL is.
Well, a GAL is a guardian ad litem. They are assigned by the court pursuant to New Hampshire Statute 461A. It's A16. They are there to represent the best interests of the party's children.
Okay.
So they're supposed to conduct an evaluation and get to understand, in the best interest of the kids, what's going on between maybe the two parties, and trying to make sure that the children and their best interests are first and foremost. And the policy of the state of New Hampshire is that children do best when parents share their child-rearing responsibilities equally between the parties.
Okay, so you go before a guardian ad litem. I'm sure you met with the guardian at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and based upon that interview, did the guardian say, look, I don't think, Your Honor, that Mr. Haas should be seeing his child?
No.
Okay, so the mystery is still out there. Why aren't you seeing your children?
Yeah. The GAL consistently over a period of more than 2 years withheld evidence from the court, didn't share detrimental evidence with the court, refused to contact witnesses that I had provided to her.
Like the school?
The school, eyewitnesses that were clearly there for her to contact and for her to do her job and make sure and understand from their perspective what was going on, the family dynamic that was going on. All of this she kept from the court.
All right, let's talk about the child support. Now, I understand that you're paying at least 10% over what the guidelines are for child support, or you have paid at least 10%. Can you give us a little history about the whole controversy with the child support and the issues of the arrearages and the whole mess there?
Okay.
I know you were before the committee today, and you had paid well over $140,000.
Yeah, it's the numbers. Yeah, about 133,000, but greater than that. Yeah.
Which is about 60% of your income.
Which over the last 4 years, that represents 43% of every net penny I've made.
Okay, and you're in sales.
Yes.
And you work on commissions.
Yes.
And are those commissions consistent, or is it feast and famine?
Commissions could be 1 month. They could be $8,000 on a great year when the economy is prospering and things are wonderful, and on a not so great month they could be $80 or $8.
Okay.
It's up and down.
Now, originally, who was hearing your case? Was it a marital master, or was it a judge?
The original, the very first temporary hearing, I was before a marital master.
Okay, and your financials went before the marital master.
My financials went before the marital master, yes.
And what did they come up with as far as the determination as far as your child support?
Well, at that time, they made a miscalculation. They had assumed that taking my best 18 months of income and dividing by 18, that's exactly what I would make every single month.
Okay.
And that's not quite true. My base salary was a set amount, and commissions aren't guaranteed. So taking 18 months and then dividing by 18 and assuming that I would be making the same amount is guessing that I'll make that consistently month after month. Okay. I was ordered to pay nearly double the child support guidelines in that mistake of that equation, and I was also ordered to pay an alimony. So in addition to the child support
here in New Hampshire.
Correct. So with the swing of a gavel, I was to pay over $45.60 a month, $4,560 a month, and while I was ordered to pay that, the marital master also made it retroactive several months, putting me $22,800 immediately in arrears.
Okay, now what happens if you didn't pay that $22,000 that was in arrears?
Well, then what happens is you'll be held in contempt of court because you haven't paid that arrearage.
Were you held in contempt?
Yes, it
so
felt like every month I was held in contempt.
What happened as soon as that contempt ruling was pronounced? Did you eventually go to prison?
Down the road, all the way up to 2000. I managed, because of friends and family and because of my wonderful employer and help from them and help from community and friends, and I was able to avoid many contempts where I was almost incarcerated. I would find a way to get enough money gathered up, whatever contempt I was looking at. This is in addition to child support that I was paying all along. If you look up my history, I have a perfect history with Department of Health and Human Services on child support. So it's not child support, it's this arrearage. I was able to pay, and break those contempts that I was being held in up until June of 2011 of last year. And on Father's Day weekend, the judge I made the argument and tried to offer the best I could in sharing additional commissions down the road that were coming, anything I could do to avoid being in contempt, but they incarcerated me on June 17th.
Because of the arrearage, or because of the...
Because of an abeyance, yeah. Because of it was an amount held over my head that I simply couldn't pay.
So this goes beyond being a deadbeat dad. You're paying how much a month?
Yeah, I provide a standard of living between on good years, bad years. All in all, over the last 4 years, like I said, I've paid over $133,000 in support of my two children.
And what, you make a couple $100,000 a year?
No, I do not. My W-2s don't reflect that. It's 43% of my net pay over the last 4 years. Right. So some months I make, some years I make $70,000. On great years I've made $110,000. But then you remove the taxes, and then you remove close to $30,000, sometimes more than $30,000 in support of my two children, and that leaves me to live on, say, $35,000, $40,000 a year.
So basically,
on the best years,
you have a perfect record as far as paying the guidelines for child support.
Perfect record through the Department of Health and Human Services. I voluntarily offered wage garnishment because I thought that would be great for my co-parent. I thought that would be easier because it'd be right there, it'd be coming right from my wages, and.
So why aren't you seeing your children?
I'm not seeing my children, Kevin, because the GAL neglected to do her job, and my children and I, over many, many, many years, were abused. Every time we would visit with one another, and I asked. Conflict. It was a contentious exchange. There were times when weren't there. They didn't show up altogether. I asked law enforcement, to get involved, which they don't want to because it's a civil matter and it's in a family division. So they want you to go back to court and settle it there. They don't want to get involved. But then again, that's outside of a court order. So who's going to enforce the court order? It was contentious, and for my children, and for the benefit of them, it was a very, very, very difficult decision to make. But I asked the GAL until she could do something, which I had been expecting her to do.
Something.
The GAL should have been doing her job, years in
Right.
advance of this. I said, until you get involved here and show the court what's been going on, I cannot continue to see my children under these, under this arrangement. It's too contentious, and the signs I was seeing,
Representative Burt, I just wanted to bring up something. You were in the court. You witnessed how the GAL responded with the ex's lawyer.
Yes.
Right. Can you just elaborate a little bit about that?
When I was sitting in court during one hearing, the GAL lady, which has been removed from the case, she was sitting on the ex-wife's side, and they would give hand and mouth gestures back and forth, which I found very odd.
Because they're supposed to represent both sides, but actually the children.
The GAL should be walking down the center of the aisle.
Right.
There should be a special chair for her in the center, not on either side, because she's only there for the children, the best interest of the children. Mm-hmm. And to add to Nick's comments about, when he said, look, GAL lady, I just want to suspend for a period of time, a small time, until you straighten it out. He still believed in the system. He was looking to the GAL to do her job and say, look, ex-wife, I know you're angry or mad or whatever your problem is, but I'm here for the children, and the children need to see their father. That is the only thing she should be doing, and she failed to do that.
Now, did you witness her going into a private conversation with the ex-wife's lawyer? And
yes, they talked after, and it was kind of over in the corner, very private.
How is the judge dealing with this whole situation? Why is the judge concerned that you're not seeing your children?
We had never been able to get to the topic of parenting in court because it was constantly about financials over the contempt.
Yeah.
We never talked about the children, and I repeatedly asked that be the focus of and the attention of the matters. I mean, it wasn't. I'm not a man, Kevin, who wasn't paying his fair share in support of his children. Mm-hmm. The record was crystal clear. Month after month, bi-week after bi-weekly pay, my support was there for my children. And it's not child support.
There's no abuse records, no child abuse records on your part, or any. You have any record of being a bad person in the community? Are you out of prison recently for violence or anything like that?
No.
All right. So let's talk about this bail situation, because in the committee, I was rather disturbed that you were told to come up with some money. If you didn't come up with some money, you were going to jail. You ended up in jail, correct?
Yeah.
And the bail was set for being in the arrears of $10,000. Cash.
Cash.
So do not come with MasterCard. Do not come with PayPal. Do not come with the cashier's check. We want cash.
Correct.
Your current wife borrowed some money from her father.
Yep, my retired father.
And you got some money from your employer.
My employer.
To set this bail.
Yes.
So there's $10,000 that was given to the bail's bondsman or something?
To the bail's bondsman at Hillsborough County Corrections. Yep.
To release you from prison. Mm-hmm. And to keep you in compliance, so that when at an appointed time, you would come before the magistrates or the judge or whoever and plead your case or whatever. And I guess I'm lost at what happened to that money.
Yeah. I have yet to see exactly where that money went, but I was told that money went to my ex-spouse.
How does bail money go to your ex-spouse?
I don't know. I know that
You have documentation for this.
yes. When I was in court the day of June 17th, I said to the judge at the time, I should mention name.
Absolutely.
Judge Ed Tenney was behind the bench. And I said to Judge Ed Tenney, I'd been making motions with the court to try and avoid being in a contempt situation. I said I clearly couldn't pay the less than $2,000 I was living on per month. I was trying to offer an additional amount that I could share of commissions just to try and beat not being in contempt. I made every effort possible and showed the court clearly what my financials were. At that point, I had made $35,000.
You showed the W-2s. You showed
I showed the W-2s. I showed my financials. I filled out a proper affidavit. Consequently, the other party did not do so. Okay, which is also against family division rules. But my financials were there in the clear, and I said to the judge in court that day, I said, Judge Ed Tenney, if you incarcerate me, you put not only my family here today, you put my daughters in jeopardy, you put all of us in jeopardy because I could lose my job, and if I lose my job, then there is zero support. And what good is that when you have a man in front of you that's clearly paying his support? I think $133,000 and greater than that number in 4 years is pretty good support.
Did you have an attorney?
I did not. I was representing myself pro se because I didn't have, obviously, if I was looking at bankruptcy and I was completely underwater paying legal bills from all the other attorneys I was trying to represent and beat this contempt. No.
When was the last
money.
time you've actually seen your children and said, listen, Daddy loves you?
September 26, 2009 was my last Saturday visitation with my
And what
children.
was the response from your children?
We had a wonderful day together that day. They came to my house in Hooksett. We walked with the dog. We took a hike like we usually do. I have photos of that day that I look at every single day. We had a wonderful time together, and that evening on our return at 6 p.m. that night, which I always drop my children off, I saw them every other Saturday. I had 26 Saturdays a year to see them from 9 to 6. I dropped them off at 6 o'clock, and what ensued was so disgusting and was so common for the experience that we had. It was so common that I was forced to watching them for 45 minutes sit in the back of their mother's vehicle and watch police talk to both parents for something that was just completely ridiculous. Having them continue to experience that, I immediately called the GAL that evening and said, "This has got to stop." And I'm
Because it's
telling you,
traumatizing the children.
It's traumatizing my children. I was seeing signs of them being alienated from me. I was seeing, consistently they were showing signs that this was really bothering them. There was these contentious exchanges.
Right.
That's not fair to them.
So you wanted a temporary suspension on visitations until the GAL could get this in line, have a coordinated visit, parental guidelines or whatever.
I wanted her to clearly, immediately, and for the record, I never wanted to temporarily suspend anything. I was asking and demanding the whole time. Evidence that I have will show, greater than 2.5 years of me consistently, day after day, informing the GAL of what was going on, asking her to do her job. Since she couldn't, I had to, as a parent, act in the best interest of my children at that time.
So what is
Since she couldn't do so.
What is the underlining problem here then? Is it that there's the court can't get past the money issue going to the ex-wife versus?
It's a broken system.
I don't understand where the breakdown is in this process.
Kevin, if I could, if you don't mind me jumping in, the system's broke. That's one of the reasons I took this case, was to help all fathers and non-custodial parents. And there are some non-custodial mothers. And once you're non-custodial, you're on the other side, the courts just want you to leave. That is the problem. And what they do is they put this arrears That's what they do, is they say, okay, your child support's going to be $10 a month or whatever you can afford, or $300 or $600, whatever it is. But we're going to go back 6 months. Well, right there, you're already in the hole. I don't, there's times you've got to keep fighting like Nick.
Right.
But there's times when fathers just say, or mothers that are on the other side just go, you know what? What do you do? How do you fight this system? It's a broken system. That is the problem.
Well, we had one case last year, I believe it was, where somebody actually burnt themselves on one of the steps of one of those official buildings because the GAL in that particular case happens to be the GAL in the Vandenberg case, from what I understand. I could be wrong. But this man was completely frustrated, and it drives you to the point of madness.
It does. And what's happening here is every time Nick goes in front of the courts and says, look, I want to see my kids, I want to see my kids. Well, we got to take care of the financial part. You are behind. Well, I'm behind because you made me behind. I've always paid my child support.
Right.
But it's this 6 months or 2 months or whatever he threw at him.
Wasn't there a way of, instead of being behind, couldn't they just tack it on to the current bill or something to that?
Well, I was trying to offer a compromise, and I was offering 17% additional commissions. I was trying to suggest that instead of paying 33% of every commission I made, I'd pay 50%, and that would get 17. So it would be caught up on just to try and get out of a contempt situation.
Interesting.
But again, I think paying close to $30,000 every single year consistently in support of 2 children. I mean, I've sat in court, unfortunately, Kevin. I've sat in court before and watched people, walk out, paying.
So how does the legislature fix this?
Well, I believe what's going to happen at the redress of grievance is that hopefully we can see some laws that are not being followed or that need to be there, and that's how legislators are going to fix it, is we're going to fix the laws.
Well, recently the House passed CACR 26.
Yes.
Now that has to do with the administrative part of the rules for the courts. And from what I understand, in 1978, the legislature gave all rulemaking ability to the courts. But what the public didn't know, because it was never on the ballot, that these rules have the effect of law.
Yes.
So when a judge says, listen, I don't need to see your affidavit, I don't need to, all I need is just the testimony from the guardian ad litem and hearsay.
It's dangerous.
And not look at the rules of evidence because of good cause,
Yeah.
then the legislature can't do anything about that.
Yep.
So just recently, we passed CACR 26 to put it back on the ballot, but it still has to pass the Senate here in New Hampshire.
That's going to be a challenge.
It will be a challenge because some people are actually saying, well, they need to compromise on that. And in my humble opinion, there should be no compromise on that, but that it should go back to where it originally was, in the people's hands via the legislature. We want to see a remedy for this as far as you getting to visit your children. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm a budget committee official in the town of Hooksett. I could be reached. I can give you my information.
How would they get in touch with you?
Sure. I live right in Hooksett. My address is 1A Hummingbird Lane. I live in Hooksett, New Hampshire. My phone number is 603-264-4778. That's my only number that I carry. You can reach me at nickh@unifundonline.com or nickhaas007@hotmail.com. And
You're welcome, legal counsel, I'm sure.
If you're a national attorney with a lot of experience that wants to look at a pro bono case that certainly could set a precedent.
Now, from what I understand, John and Nick, this isn't the only case like this in the state of New Hampshire.
No.
Unfortunately.
We were talking recently in one of the redress committees, Ms. Rice, I believe her name was, saying something very similar, that as soon as the individual goes to the husband goes before the judge, you're already in your rearage. You haven't even, this is just at the preliminary hearing,
Yeah.
and things are put retroactive, and you don't know what hit you. And instead of it going retroactive for both parents, it usually goes directed towards one parent.
Yes.
And that parent seems to have the deep pockets.
Unfortunately, Kevin, the courts aren't enforcing RSA 546, which is the Uniform Civil Liability for Support, and it dictates very clearly that both parties' incomes, both the ability to provide for both households evenly, need to be considered in making a judgment on support. And certainly that RSA, is a part of child support guidelines and the way this whole thing works.
One of the things that really caught my eye in your testimony was the fact that the judge said you could take a loan out or something to that effect.
Yeah. Go down to payday loan or something.
This is the ability to pay.
He wrote in one of his orders that I should find a way to take out a loan.
And you have that documented.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I believe there's a Supreme Court ruling on this, that the ability to take out a loan is not necessarily the ability to pay.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I know in our audience we have your pastor, I forgot his name.
Oh, Pastor George's.
Pastor George. And he's in our audience right now. We don't have him mic'd up yet, but we wanted him to come in for a character witness. He's also, you're from the town of Manchester, New Hampshire, or Goffstown, New Hampshire?
No,
Hooksett.
Hooksett.
To me, they're all the same.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
That's somebody from Penarville,
yeah.
right? Yeah. But he came to be a character witness as far as your, and John and I can see him in the audience right now.
Yeah.
We wanted to have a character witness for you, but we are running a little bit behind in time, but we wanted to get your story out for today.
Sure.
Real quick, Kevin. The thing here is when I was going through these papers, the problems, like I said, the system's broke. Nick is not alone. I guarantee you, once this airs, there's going to be tens of thousands of parents out there, unfortunately most of them dads, that are going to go, oh my God.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm not alone. Because you do feel alone.
Yeah.
You get so overwhelmed, you feel alone.
John.
But you aren't.
Where do you go when you're at this point, when the court won't listen to you until you come up with the money? Where do you go when you don't have, you run out of money for an attorney, you've complied with everything you can, you're hitting a brick wall? Where do you go? I'm giving my committee a plug here.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, if I may answer, going back to when I was a student in school, we always knew the three branches of government: the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. And the legislative branch is obviously making the laws that the judicial branch is going to follow in making determination on their cases.
And the judiciary should not be making laws then.
Right.
Right.
So my understanding was that if I can't get help at the judiciary at that level, then it's time to go to the legislative level and make my case known that I'm not being heard down here fairly and equally, and that's against constitutional rights. That's against all of our statutes that we stand for in the state. Got to go to the folks that are making those laws, and that's the redress.
The Redress of Grievance Committee.
Yes.
Some people say that this next legislator's next session, they're probably going to get rid of this committee. And
Well, it's new now.
It's new now, that's right. And what we have before us are 33 cases, very similar, that are shedding lights on not just the court system. We have another guest that'll be coming on after you folks, for the town of Rochester, New Hampshire. And it's giving the town of Rochester, New Hampshire, a voice as well regarding transparency in government.
Yeah.
If there's no redress of grievance committee, where do the people voice their opinion?
They don't.
Right.
They're silent.
Well, I want to thank you folks for coming on the show. I want, if the folks here that are watching the show can offer some assistance, offer some legal advice, please contact Nick or actually even Representative John Burt.
Yep.
from
Goffstown.
from the town of Goffstown. How did they reach you, John?
I have an email. It's John, John, at Burt, NH, BURTNH, like New Hampshire.com.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add before we say goodbye to you for now?
Just that I appreciate you having me on the show, and hopefully through my petition and maybe some of these others, we can really shed some light on where we I think the state has some very good laws in place. Mm-hmm. If they were following those laws,
Yes.
I think we wouldn't have some of these cases that you're seeing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, it has to start with we audit in the private sector, you audit every day what's going on inside of an organization. We need to audit sometimes.
Like a judicial review.
A judicial review.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that they're following the statutes the correct way and applying the rules equally. Applying the rules so that these cases don't fall through the cracks. And I think like John said, it's a broken system. These are great steps at fixing that broken system.
Well, I want to thank my guests for joining me for another half hour of Speak Up New Hampshire. If you have the ability to help or are interested in further information, please contact our guests or even contact me at speakupnh@gmail.com. And until next week,